So our next topic is guaranteed to be a great conversation. So I'm just going to ask everyone to settle back into your seat, or if you're leaving the room, please do so now, because I want to welcome up to this stage. We've got three fantastic panelists. We've got Erin Wilson, who is the VP of Marketing at Home Equity Bank. We've got Mona Afazal, who is the Global Director at Scotia, and we've got Avinash D'Souza, who is the VP of Product Marketing at Global X. So please join me in welcoming our panelists. Okay, so let's settle into our panel. I think what you're going to find with this panel, I think it's going to be very interesting for you. We've got a mix of B2B, B2C. Yes, we're all in financial services, and yet so different, okay? So I think that will make for a really engaging conversation. And I'm going to, oh, sorry, I think I just, no, I think we are good. I just have a few messages up on the screen. Okay, sorry, pardon me, okay. So what I missed sharing is that we are splitting into two tracks. Thank you for the team for reminding me. This is the first track on marketing excellence. If we have had some people leave already, they may have gone to track 2, which a colleague of mine is moderating, and that one is about data and insights. But keep in mind that all of these presentations are available through the app, so you will not be missing out whether you're in this room or the other room. Okay, so let's dive right into some introductions. Let's get to know this panel. So Erin, let's start with you. You know, where are you coming from, and a little bit about your experience.
I am the VP of Marketing at Home Equity Bank, and I've been there for about 4 years. I started in the midst of the pandemic. I've worked at various other financial institutions, including American Express, Cap One, and Intact Insurance. And one of the things I love about being at Home Equity Bank is that I really believe in the product. I know we help our customers. We can help them sleep at night. It's a reverse mortgage product, so it's targeted at older Canadians, and it helps them fund their retirement. So,
thank you. Avinash, I know you bring a background in product marketing, more of a focus on P&L. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure, thank you. I'm Avinash D'Souza. I work at Global X Canada as the VP of Product Marketing. I've been there for about 4 years. Prior to that, I've spent a bit of time at BNP Paribas and HSBC, primarily in investment banking and risk, and then I realized that marketing was the more interesting life choice. So I helped fans. At Global X, I head up the product marketing division, which focuses mainly on product positioning and messaging. And what I really like about coming to work every day at Global X is the opportunity to touch both the advisor side of the business, as well as the B2C side of the business, which is DIY investors, and actually drive change in their lives. So it's always a toss-up between, okay, are you driving ROI, or are you actually driving meaningful change for people? I'm kind of happy to say, as of now, we tick off both.
Great. And Mona?
Hi, it's lovely to be here. My name is Mona. I come from Scotiabank. I've been here for about 3 years, and my role is really around enterprise growth marketing and heading up the function that is focused on driving digital-to-bank sales and really helping to elevate the experience customers have through our digital channels. And so it's been a really interesting journey to see the banking evolution in digital experiences. Prior to Scotia, I was in a CPG company heading up digital transformation for a brand called Reckitt. Most people wouldn't know what that is. It's if you're familiar with like Enfamil, Lysol, etc. So that's what it is. And I spent a number of years on the agency side working across a lot of different brands.
Great, thank you very much. So really what we want to cover off with the panel is we're going to dive into social media, and It does remind me a little bit of some of the technology conversations that we've had so far in the conference, right? There are so many choices. How do you know you're making the right choice? You know, we all consume social media personally. No doubt you're using it at work as well. And we're really going to look to our panel of experts to help us make some choices. So Aaron, let's start with you. Knowing that your product tends to target seniors, it's a reverse mortgage. How are you showing up in social media?
That's a great question. So we tend to market to two audiences. So one is the end consumer, which is Canadians 55 plus who are homeowners. And then we also target partners who can sell the reverse mortgage on our behalf. So that's mortgage brokers, wealth specialists, and banks. So we tend to divide our strategy between Facebook and Instagram to talk more to consumers, and then we leverage Instagram and X to talk more to our B2B partners. And we really find that's helpful because we have different audiences on each platform, and we can tailor our message specifically on each platform.
Excellent. And Avinash, I know, like Aaron, you've got a B2B audience. You also have B2C. How are you making choices around what platform and how you show up differently on each platform?
Right. So our primary product is ETFs, exchange-traded funds, and we have two, primary cohorts at this point of time. One is advisors who sell from then on to the end user, and DIY investors. I think the way we look at it is more from the perspective of what it is that we're selling at any given point of time. So if it is a product that is more geared to advisors, we tend to limit the messaging of that product to LinkedIn, for example, which is more, geared to thought leadership, insight, white papers, so on and so forth. When it's a more, DIY-friendly product, if you will, say like thematic ETFs, that's when we kind of look at Twitter and Instagram and Facebook to basically tap into that DIY crowd. And we've seen that, the messaging has to change with, the platform as well, but it all gets driven from, the product suite that you're driving at any given point of time. So in effect, your channel or your platform is the last consideration that you make. It starts with what are you selling, who are you pitching it to, and where do you find them? Where is that watering hole?
Thank you. So, Mona, when I think about Scotiabank, I think about being such a diverse financial services organization, which is a little bit different from Global X and from Home Equity Bank. And knowing that, you've got such a broad group of segments, such a broad group of customers and business products that you're trying to message and sell, how do you navigate social media? How do you come up with a framework to make some of your choices?
Across social media, I think we've really focused on advice as our anchor, and across different products, it's really been focused on how are we doing the right thing for our customer and advising them in the right possible way. And so given that social channels are really a consideration channel for us, we focus on empathy-based content that's really focused on providing advice relevant to wherever we are at times. So an example is Bank of Canada decreased their interest rate recently. What does that mean for a customer? Really being empathetic and sharing a viewpoint that is valuable to them, being able to provide that in an insightful way that's easily digestible, and something they can relate to.
I think what I'm hearing across the panel are words like authenticity, building out trust, sharing it in a way that's digestible. And, how have you, particularly if you think about building trust, Aaron, the idea of a reverse mortgage, while it provides seniors the opportunity to stay in their home longer, it may be met with some skepticism. So how do you build that level of trust with the B2B audience and the B2C audience?
So one of the ways that we do that is through putting out educational content, and people consume the content on the different platforms very differently. So on Instagram, a short form video might work, whereas on LinkedIn, we can write a longer form post, or Facebook, even a longer form post, and people are more willing to consume it. We found that infographics work really well on Facebook, and people are willing to consume it on there. So it's really finding the right channel to get your message out and keeping a consistent brand-focused message across all the channels. I think education is paramount, but in terms of what people are willing to consume and how much content, it really depends on which platform they're on for how quickly they want to consume it and digest it.
Yeah, so I'm definitely hearing some themes around education from yourself, from Mona, using education to build that trust. So it's not so much about selling the product, it's really using content to educate your audiences. Avinash, how does that land with you in terms of using content to build trust and authenticity?
Pretty much 100%. Reason being that you have a relatively cluttered financial provider space, right? It is what it is. But the only way you're going to break through that clutter is by providing content slash education slash thought leadership, if you will, in a way that resonates with people at their level. So to give you, for example, I'm happy to talk equity essential ETFs to advisors all day, right? And we can talk asset allocation and the way the product is structured, so on and so forth. But for a DIY investor, I need to explain it to them at a stage where they're at. And I think Erin touched upon that earlier. Meeting the end user where they're at is critical for that education to actually happen, because as we know in communication, it's not just one way, it's by sync, right? So you've got to close that loop there. So for asset allocation, for example, I would talk about simplicity, I would talk about diversification, I would talk about low cost, words that people are looking for, words that solve a pain point, if you will. So it is education, it is product education, but it has to be done in a way that actually is understandable. And in a sense, it's our job as marketers to humanize what we do, right? Simply because finance is, or money, if you will, is an incredibly emotional subject, right? So you have to speak to people at a level, at which they're at a given point of time.
And Mona, how does that relate to your business? Do you see some of those trends, or do you find that you're going in a different direction?
I think a lot of what we do is focused on data and insights and grounded in, as a bank, the understanding we have of our clients and customers and what their needs are. And so that's really pivotal for us for our Know Me and Advise Me concept that we really focus on. Focusing really on using the data and insights available to us on a client's potential customer background, knowing that, to Avinash's point, it's a sensitive topic. And so it is something important that they feel like what we're providing them from a service and offering perspective aligns to what their needs are. And so it's really grounded in the concept of personalization. I know some of you were talking about that earlier, of understanding your clients and customers in a way that they feel that you can connect with them in a way that when you advise them, they resonate.
I think that's very helpful. What I'm hearing is taking the steps to tailor our content, which I think as marketers, we understand. We've been doing that for a long time. But what I'm hearing from the panel is the added layer of further tailoring it to the social channel, right? And how it shows up. One of our panelists yesterday talked about TikTok and asked the audience, raise your hands if your business is on TikTok. And because of course we're financial services marketers, some organizations are further ahead on that particular channel than others, right? Sometimes there's a bit of hesitancy around how best to use it. And I wonder how you're using it at Scotia. How are you showing up on TikTok? Are you, I'm sure you're there. Are you kind of putting your toes in the water, or do you have a more in-depth strategy?
So we definitely are quite in-depth in TikTok. We love the channel. It's a really engaging channel. We know it's a channel that customers resonate with, and they're engaging with the content. Most of our peers are also quite invested in the channel. But the process it took to get there was a process. It was really around understanding what are the risk variables that we have to account for, understanding the type of content that's present. It's not picking up and lifting your TV spot and putting it on TikTok. And it was an education process because as marketers, we're inherently built to use what's available to us in all channels and platforms. And TikTok is not one of those platforms. And so building the cadence and capabilities internally to be able to create content that is relevant for TikTok, that is built with the right specs and mindset of a customer and how they're engaging with voice on constantly. And really that was a focus point for us. And so it was an experience. It took us time to get there. And we really focused on humanizing it. And I don't know if anyone's checked out Scotia, but one of the things I'm really proud of is a piece of content series that we built called Humans of Scotia. And it was really around the components of actual people at Scotiabank and how they engage with the products and services, right down from someone who used to or is still at the bank and has been for 50 years, and the experience that she felt when she was working 50 years ago in a branch. And so really bringing those real life components helped elevate the experience that our clients have on TikTok with us as a brand.
I think what's interesting, Mona, is when you share that it's a process, the impression I get is you didn't jump all in at once. There was probably time to socialize with your stakeholders and take some more modest steps. Is that a bit about your plan?
100%. It was really a phased approach. It was a strategic approach to getting alignment from key executive stakeholders internally, making sure they understood potential risks around brand safety at the early onset. There were some brand safety considerations which have now evolved, so that makes our life much easier. But it was a process of getting buy-in, alignment, and strategic alignment, as well as the creative content. And all of those sort of were steps to doing a first test case and then moving into additional sort of scaled approaches.
Thank you very much. Now, Erin, will we see or do we see today home equity on TikTok? Is that a channel that you pursue?
No, it's not a channel that we pursue just because our audience isn't really on that channel, and it gives us a little bit more time to figure things out. But where we're at, I really resonate with what Mona said, which is that you can't just lift and move stuff there. So we really need to figure out, a reverse mortgage is a very private product, and it's not something our customers want to talk about in public all the time. So we have to figure out how we could leverage that and how we could leverage it on TikTok. But one of the things that is interesting is that technologies are changing all the time, and clients are coming in and out of usage on the different platforms. And I've read some stats that say people are disengaging from the various platforms because as more AI, which we all want to use, is generating more content, it's becoming a little bit less relevant. So people aren't engaging as much. So regardless of what platform it is, I think it's important to stay relevant and entertain, but also to leverage the right influencers on each platform and find the right people to help tell your story.
I think what's interesting in your example is that you're being very choiceful in the social channels, right? And not feeling so pressured that you have to be everywhere all at once, which is certainly some of the organizations I've worked with and have worked for. There's a bit of pressure to jump on this, and why aren't we here? And you're making strategic choices, I think. Yeah. Avinash, how about yourself? Thoughts on TikTok? Is that where we're going to see your funds show up?
Well, I hope so. Hopefully in 2025, we will have a dedicated TikTok presence, because at this point of time, I can say within the marketing department, I spend way too much time on TikTok as is. So I'm trying to make the case internally first and then go to strategic stakeholders. But to what Mona was saying and to Erin's points as well, TikTok is a bit of a beast for us at this point of time to wrap our hands around. Not because it's substantially different in terms of content and feedback, as Reddit, but more from the perspective of the timeliness involved, right? When you look at TikTok, we've got a very large segment of our audience on TikTok, which skews younger towards Gen Z and millennials, but the behavior set is very, very different, right? So you need to not only match content up to basically meet them in that behavior, but also meet them in a timely fashion. So having that constant content drip is pretty much essential for TikTok. Understanding what the trends are, which are, sometimes not more than a week long, generating content quickly enough, and, to all of my compliance colleagues in the room, getting it through compliance in a timely fashion so that you're on trend and you're not off by about a month is a bit of a challenge, right? But we do see incredible growth spurts. They have got an incredibly fleshed out analytics platform to look at. And for us at this point of time, it's more about looking at how our target audience is behaving in platforms other than Facebook and Twitter, and essentially meshing that into a data lake of sorts and saying, okay, this is what people do when we're not looking at them, right?
Yes.
This is how they play. This is how they engage. Right.
Fascinating. And I appreciate how you, again, bring us back to some of the fundamentals around data and analytics and customer behavior, right? If you have been in marketing for a bit, as we have, those are really fundamentals that are still true to the case of building out your strategy. I want to come back to a comment that Aaron mentioned about influencers, because we have heard other panelists talk about the importance of partnerships and the importance of reaching outside of your organization to leverage insights, leverage their perspective, and of course with influencers, you can also leverage their platform. I think it's also sometimes difficult to navigate influencers. So, tell us a little bit, let's start with Aaron. Tell us a little bit about how you go about finding the right influencer, using them perhaps, or leveraging their presence on social media.
So the starting point is really making sure there's a good alignment with our brand and that they're in the right demographic to talk to our demographic. So would our demographic resonate with them? Would they find them a source of trust? So right now we have a strong partnership with Patty Levitt-Reed. She's our chief financial commentator, and she can leverage her previous experience on CTV and as a chief financial commentator at TD. And she's got her own channel and her own message that she puts out there. But then she also comments on our webinars and on occasion on our channels and writes blogs for us. So really what we're doing is leveraging her voice and the relevancy and timeliness about certain topics, like the Bank of Canada announcing interest rates, or recently there was an announcement from the Ontario government about a change in, I won't get into it, but making NOCs fraudulent NOCs no longer allowed. So just taking those relevant moments that people care about and that affect our customers and commenting on it and using short form videos like Reels or videos to kind of talk about it, create a conversation with our customers. We also have partnerships with brand ambassadors, so it's trying to find ways with them to leverage them. So we've got Kurt Browning, and we do TV commercials with him, but we also find ways to leverage him to talk to our customers and then say, okay, is there anything within this conversation that we can use and we can put out there?
I think those are interesting examples. So I knew of Patty Levitt-Reed when she was at TD. It's an organization that I worked at. And, what strikes me, and I think this is relevant for all influencers, is she is very good about providing a little bit about her background, so you kind of know a bit about her. She described it as a bit of her bias or her own point of view, let's say, and then launches into, here's my perspective. So I think she does a great job of coming across as quite objective and someone who you could trust, which I definitely appreciate. Mona, I am sure at Scotia, such a large organization, you're not new to the ideas of influencers or brand ambassadors, as Aaron mentioned. How do you apply them to your social media strategy?
So I think from a perspective of influencers, I think we bucket them into two areas and criteria, I would say. I think we have partnerships at a bank level, which are really built on values, aligned and shared values, doing good for our community and organizations across us. And so really what you'll see from us is investing in things like the Professional Women's Hockey League and things like that, and having ambassadors that are really focused on that force for growth concept and force for good, and bringing that together. And so our values really need to align in the partnerships, what we do with our influencers. The second component is really around financial literacy and financial advice. And so we believe there is a lot of value in making sure that it is Scotiabank who is providing that advice. And so often on our channels and our content, you will see Scotiabankers providing that front for advice, because we're building the cadence that we know you best and we're providing you that best advice. And so building that back to our brand equity of a bank that really understands you really well means that what we put out, regardless of which platform it is, if it's from an advice perspective for our clients on social, it really is coming from us.
I think it's great. It's what I find interesting, having, like many of you, worked in financial services for a few years, how you are using your own people and your own employees. The individual who worked at a branch 50 years ago. It really lends itself well to that authenticity, which each of you have spoken about. So Avanish, tell us about partnerships and influencers. Like, is that, I know you're going to be on TikTok in 2025, but you're currently in social media. So how do those show up for you?
So our partnership strategy is first and foremost brand-led. As some of you might know, we've recently rebranded from Horizons ETFs to Global X Canada on May 1st. And that's not just, a name change or, a ticker change. That's an ideology change, if you will. And when we look for ambassadors to partner with, we look first at whether they are, in sync with our brand values and whether they understand our products at any level and actually use them, because it really doesn't make sense to have somebody schlep our product, if you will, if they don't use it or they have no experience with it. Our second process of working with them is making sure that we don't overwhelm them with the corporatiness of an organization, right? Because one of the reasons why organizations choose to work with influencers is for their voice, for their authenticity, and for their engagement with their target audience. And we've seen, right, in the past that when we've worked with influencers, as you start out the contract, it's wonderful and it's all roses and sunshine. And towards the end of the contract, it's like somebody from the department has basically written it for them and they're just voicing it, which is entirely the wrong objective, right? So we've kind of moved away from that path, if you will, and just let them speak their truth in a way that is, of course, compliance approved. So we do vet that content, but for the most bit, we let them speak to their audience in the way that they see best. So for example, we have a bit of a tie-up on YouTube with Adriano Stranieri, who basically runs the passive income investing channel. He is one of the foremost experts of passive investing in Canada. And we essentially speak to him about our products, but we let him formulate his opinion. Where we weigh in is on product detail, but where he ranks us is entirely his call. When he chooses to drop his video is his call. What he chooses to say on his videos, that's his call as well, right? So we kind of let them, run it the way they would, except that there's a partnership involved.
I find it interesting. What I'm hearing across the panel is setting up partners and influencers and even ambassadors with some objectivity, right? So that they can really own the message. Of course, relate it back to your organizations, and I think that really goes to authenticity and trust, right? That's really, as consumers, as potential clients of your companies, that's what we're looking for. And, building on that, all that you shared with us, if you look forward, what would be, if you could give, one piece of advice, each of you, to our audience as they go back to their organizations, what would it be around social media and social channels and really getting the most out of that? Mona, do you want to start us out?
Sure. I think probably the most important thing that I think as marketers we have to remember is each platform is different, and the purpose that we use it for is different, and the customers and the way they engage with those platforms is different. So knowing that we have to really tailor our content and our message to the way they're engaging with those platforms is really critical, and that's the best way you're going to get the most value for your investment in those platforms. So really thinking about experiences and platforms that are focused on those channels.
Thank you. Avinash, what would you share with the audience?
Don't ignore the impact of paid. When you look at social media, it's easy to lose, the forest for the trees and focus just on the organic side. But at the end of the day, you've got a defined audience that you can expand and grow with paid. You can get much better targeting with paid. You typically have immediate impact, and you can have extensive analytics with paid that you can't typically do with organic. So in a sense, you can study the population for the cost of the sample.
Thank you. Erin.
Yeah, I guess just to build on what Avnish said, you can leverage both of them. So I think one of the strategies that we employ is leveraging organic and seeing where people engage with it and then retargeting them with a paid ad because we know they're a more engaged audience. So using the two together is really important. The final point that I'll add is just that social media platforms are transitory. There's new ones popping up all the time. So use your data and analytics to see where people are engaging, what kind of stories they want to hear, and most of all, stay authentic on each platform.
I want to thank these panelists. I feel like we're going to return to our organizations with some very practical ideas, from developing the strategy straight through to how we show up and what our message will be. So thank you so very much, Erin. I think we have run a bit short on questions, but not to worry. The good news is that I think you'll either find them in person later today or on LinkedIn, and you can tap into more of their insights and expertise. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.